Hi everybody, I'm Ultan and I want to talk to you about my major research project, which was about nudging people to be more sustainable with their mobile photos. So the project was inspired by artists who were working with photos and by climate change. So the future doesn't look too good right now. Temperatures are soaring and our climate goals are slipping away from us. So what can user experience design do to help us? I used a user-centered design process, grounded in data and empathy, while continuously learning. Each step of the way came with its own set of deliverables for the research, the definition, ideation, the prototyping, and the testing phases. More digital photos are being taken than ever. 1.72 trillion photos are taken worldwide every year. That's about 54,500 every single second. Highly mobile and social activity, 95% of these photos are taken with smartphones and 90% of them get shared with others. Digital life needs data centers for the transfer and storage of content, and that includes photos. These data centers need absolutely huge amounts of electricity, mostly generated by fossil fuels, and that means carbon emissions from power stations. This impact is contrary to sustainability goals, but is hidden from the average person. The internet is now the largest coal-fired industry on Earth, creates more carbon emissions than airlines, and for example, Netflix.com's advertising cookies alone contribute 428.6 tons of CO2 every single month. Nudging or persuasion literature comes from Thaler and Sunstein, Cialdini, and Fogg's Fogg behavioral model, or FBM. For example, stickers from the Environmental Protection Agency in the US showing climate information persuaded car buyers to make more sustainable choices when purchasing vehicles. Nudging can be seen working everywhere, offline and on. And the FBM is highly influential in UX design, using a range of different techniques. Photo behavior and sustainability attitudes were researched with real people using diary studies, online surveys, and interviews. Most people took lots and lots of photos and were very positive about being sustainable. However, hardly anyone were aware of the proven causative link between digital content and global warming. The empathy phase deliverables included personas, customer journey maps, empathy maps, and task flow analysis, used to humanize the problem in context. Two personas based on a Gen Z and millennial user who wanted to be sustainable and use their photos and work and play in a fast-moving world helped shape the design. Apps for sustainability and environmental purposes were reviewed. There was a very strong use of nudging principles throughout, such as social proofing and liking, reciprocation, commitment, and consistency, and showing consequential options, and so on. These apps are mostly used for domestic purposes, such as recycling. Photo management apps capture only photo file information. No app measures carbon emissions from digital life or provides a way to manage it. With this evidence of climate change, the photo behavior, and the successful use of nudging as a design technique, along with the lack of a digital app present, I saw an opportunity to design a photo management app using nudging principles that would persuade people to consider the impact of their photos and to manage things differently. The user problems were defined as how can we inform people to think more about the environmental consequences of their photos, and how can we enable people to continue taking photos but to be more sustainable. So this study is only about photos. Video content is not included. So two research questions were formed. One, will a photo management app designed using nudging principles be more usable than a non-nudging app? And two, will a photo management app designed using nudging principles motivate people more towards doing things for the environment than a non-nudging app? This led to the three hypotheses. One, there will be a significant difference in usability scores between using a photo management app designed with and without nudging principles. 2.1, there will be a significant difference in environmental motivation scores before and after using a photo management app designed without nudging principles. And 2.2, there will be a significant difference in environmental motivation scores before and after using a photo management app designed with nudging principles. This was a mixed method sequential explanatory study, gathering different types of data in different ways. The qualitative findings were used to help explain the quantitative. The motivation towards the environment scale, or MTES, and the system usability scale, or SUS, were used to measure the app design as the independent variable, acting on the dependent variables of environmental motivation and on usability. The design began with sketching ideas about a photo management app. The thought was to let people know about the impact of their photos on the environment and then use a slider to change the photo file format to one with a smaller impact. They could measure their progress using a dashboard and so on. The sketches were guerrilla tested in the Marvel app. To design the app prototype, a color picker tool and the material design system were used. Sustainable empathy and concern for the environment were reflected using purple colors, and I named the app Photos. The first high-fidelity prototype was created in Figma and used a nudging approach of a modal to make users slow down and think about the environmental impact when they uploaded a photo. This was pilot tested with users. They loved the idea of the information. It was new and it was interesting. However, the modal needed refinement and the slider to change options on the dashboard were not intuitive. Now, to measure the impact of nudging, a non-nudging version of the app was also created for comparison using A/B testing. The second prototype used a time modal and simpler language and iconography, and users now changed formats by clicking options. They measured their carbon progress in a clearer way using donut charts and sparkline visualizations, and this version and the non-nudging equivalent became the subjects for the test experiment. An online unmoderated A/B test using a Maze platform was conducted. After getting their consent, 42 participants were asked about their motivation towards the environment using MTS to then perform 4 tasks with the app, and then asked about their motivation towards the environment again using MTS, and how they felt about the app usability using SUS. Afterwards, there were moderated talk-through interviews with users who used both versions of the app. In the end, 22 non-nudging and 20 nudging participants completed all tasks, and that was followed by interviews with 3 people. Non-parametric tests on the quantitative data were run in SPSS. A Mann-Whitney U-test showed no significant difference in usability that could be reliably attributed to the nudging design. A Wilcoxon signed rank test showed no significant difference in motivation could be reliably attributed to the nudging intervention, and there was no significant difference in motivation between the non-nudging and nudging interventions. The qualitative feedback that followed revealed that the carbon consequences information was highly valued, but participants strongly disliked the frictional approach of being slowed down. The language and the mental models of the settings and dashboards weren't obvious. Users got confused about the relationship between the file format and climate change, where evidence from the click maps from Maze supported the findings. So with 2 research questions answered in the negative and using the statistical findings, it is all 3 null hypotheses that are accepted. The design process became disrupted. A third prototype was prepared after a review with a more experienced designer, and many changes were made, and this included giving users control over the information, stronger rebranding as the Photons app, better use of navigation layouts, and providing user assistance. Now, this version wasn't tested, but the design recommendations aligned with the findings in the testing. So the experiment did not show that an app with nudging principles increased motivation towards the environment or usability when compared with a non-nudging version. The sustainability impact information was liked by everyone. They thought it was new, thought-provoking, and useful. However, the way this information was positioned and the control over it was not popular. Using the frictional model slowed down users, participants to use words like juddery and clunky, and this militated against motivation and usability. So maybe repositioning the information earlier as optional onboarding might offer a solution. So throughout the project, testing issues with language and mental models remained hard to resolve. Users didn't think in terms of uploading, saving, or syncing. They didn't distinguish between photos being on their device or in the cloud. They were all just in their app. Also, the settings impact on the environment needed to be clarified more, and maybe enabling setting carbon goals would make the feedback dashboard more meaningful. This was an attempt at addressing a problem of using nudging in an app to manage carbon impact. No such app currently exists. It was a learning experience throughout. With the emerging movement of design for sustainability appearing, there's never been a better time to continue the work, though scaling back the ambitious nature of the study as recommended by Fogg's best practices would be preferable. For future work, more participants for the testing phase are definitely required. The statistical tests were underpowered as is. The points about nudging using friction, providing user control, plain language comprehension, and understanding better the mental models need to be taken on board. And testing a working prototype app as part of a longer diary study could be very valuable. The findings will be strengthened by a closer analysis, I think, of the intrinsic motivation to include user experience aspects as well as pure usability. I'd like to thank everybody at IDT who helped shape the paper, and to all the research and testing participants, especially Jerry McGovern. A shout out to students Kevin Moore and Aisling Smith, who rescued me from a mountain of technical and design debt. And finally, I want to express huge gratitude to John Dempsey and to Dr. Andrew Erty for their understanding, constructive feedback, and good humour in helping me complete this journey over the last 2 years. So please play the screencast of the app to see more. Thank you very much.